Yes, yo, you don't stop. It's a Wednesday, which means it's a London day for me, which means you get a cheeky walk and talk version of the alternative paper review. And a loud siren, apparently. First up to the Mail this morning. Bashir, I was a victim of racism inside the BBC. But this is one of my favourite kind of journo-political flare-ups of cretiny. It's like when somebody does something stupid or deceitful, in this case, they make themselves look deceitful. And then when the consequences come knocking at their door, they're like, I don't know, it was professional jealousy that took me down. Bashir has claimed in a 2020 email that it's not his incompetence, it's not his deceit, it's the fact that he was a second-generation non-white immigrant of working-class roots and that he had the temerity to enter a royal palace. Which, look, I'm sure he has faced some racism. I'm positive of that. And it's possible that racism, to some extent, or prejudice or ignorance, did contribute to the way that he was treated following the Diana stuff and the fact that it was revealed by an inquiry that he had faked certain documents and fueled her paranoia. But you have to ask yourself, like, on balance, what is the bigger story? What is the bigger concern here? Is it the fact that he was possibly treated differently than a white colleague would have been? Or is it that in this inquiry, they said that he had faked documents to secure that interview and basically set the stage, set a chain of events in motion that you could arguably say contributed to her death? Which one of those is the greater concern for you? I mean, there's no prizes for guessing which is the greater concern for the Daily Mail because they hate the BBC and they hated Diana. Anyway, let's move on. The Times say there's not much room for big tax cuts, so says Jeremy Hunt. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't see where this obsession or this idea comes from that we should slash a load of taxes. Firstly, against the backdrop of what happened with Liz Truss and Kwesi Kwarteng. But secondly, it was only 6 months ago that Jeremy Hunt was like, I'm sorry, I don't have any good news for you. It's all looking very bleak. The national debt is colossal. We can't afford tax cuts. So no, there's not going to be any good news anytime in the near future. Now we're like 6 months ahead and everyone's like, whoa. I think, do you know what? I think Hunt might tell the IMF and their analysis. I think he might tell them to go swivel. Because yesterday, the IMF said the British economy is in no position to be cutting taxes. All the belching, frothing backbenchers are like, no, I've got to cut taxes, real conservatism. I was like, there is such political pressure now to cut taxes. Hunt is actually going to tell the IMF to go swivel for the crime of agreeing with Jeremy Hunt from 6 months ago. Oh, I don't know who's talking about like we can't cut taxes. It's you. You said that. And finally to the Daily Express today. Migration rules will halt. Shock population rise. So this is a good headline to focus on, to deconstruct. Are you ready? Let's go through it piece by piece. Migration rules, first off. Now by rules, they mean stopping the boats, right? But that's not migration, that's asylum. Like you could be a migrant, you could apply for a visa to come and live and work in the UK. That's immigration. Or you could be a refugee. You could come through the asylum system. They're two very different things. So already it's bullshit. Let's continue. It says migration rules will halt the shock population rise. So it says it will halt, as in like in the future. And then a bit further down it says plan to cut immigration. So it's a plan to do so in the future. But apparently it's already working. It's already bringing it down by 300,000. So it will halt in the future, but it is already working. So a complete mixture of confusing tenses, and also it's not working. Like the idea was to bring down the numbers. I mean, I don't think we need to reduce them anyway, but if the idea is to bring them down to 300,000, we already know that that's not working because immigration figures have never been so high. Finally, what is this newspaper? What is this headline presupposing? Right? It's assuming that a rise in population is a bad thing, right? Now, how many other weeks are we reading about a baby shortage, about how people aren't having kids anymore, about an aging population? You know, we have a creaking social care system that nobody appears able to fix or fund properly. And it's the sort of situation that we're in now is like, okay, well, look, to fund that with this aging population, you either need a lot of Brits to start having babies, but every time we talk about the cost of childcare, it's the same people who write for and read this newspaper who'll be like, oh no, we're not giving people handouts. If you can't afford kids, don't have them. Well, if you're not going to make it easy for people to have babies like the domestic British population, you're going to need some immigrants to fund this care home sector as people grow older and they need more help and they need Meals on Wheels and someone to wipe their ass for them. You know, it's like, oh, look at this projected population growth. It's so scary. Is it though? Because aren't you the same guy who's complaining that there's never a nurse around in the care home? I don't know. It's always the disingenuous, well, this is going to put a lot of pressure on public services. Oh, right, okay. Well, why don't you look into tax avoidance then?